Okay. Okay, perfect. All right. So we're learning chapter 20 in Tanya. Very, very powerful, important part of Tanya. And very, very important, powerful part of Tanya. And I want to just give a little bit of an introduction. In the past chapter 19, I think 18, we basically said that there is an unbelievable hidden love that a Jew has to Hashem. An Ava Misuteres, we called it. And there's no way in the world that that love of Hashem is a gift, we said, from our forefathers. And literally, a Jew cannot sin to Hashem when he senses that love. And the only reason a Jew sins is because he had a spirit of folly. His mind's not working. He's not in touch with his love of Hashem. And he's not in touch with that. And that's even the lowest person, it's awakened when you ask this Jew who's totally not involved to deny God. He'll never be able to do it, because at that point you will awaken his hidden love to Hashem, and not just will he not be able to do the sin, but it'll completely engulf him. Once you touch, like you woke up the beast, once you woke up the godly soul, it'll totally engulf him, and he'll do many other mitzvahs too. So the Alter Rebbe now, so the question we have is, well, what about, so what? In order for all of us to get in touch with our godly soul, we need to be threatened to serve idols. That's the only way. Is there another way? And that's where the Alter Rebbe introduces the next few chapters of Tanya, chapter 20, chapter 21, and so on, about that. The truth is that every mitzvah and every sin is really denying God or the unity of Hashem. That's where he wants to go in the next few chapters. So it's a fascinating, and therefore, because of that, because it's denying God or accepting God as king, that means that even though it's just a small mitzvah, it's not really a small mitzvah. It's really a major mitzvah, because every mitzvah is accepting God, that God is the king of the world, and every sin is denying God. And therefore, you should also be as passionate, and your godly soul should even be awakened, that when you want to do even a little sin, because at that moment you're completely and utterly denying Hashem, which is a very serious offense, and that should awaken your godly soul. That is what the Alter Rebbe is basically saying. How is he going to say it? So he's going to say that the first two commandments of I am God, your God, and you should not have any other gods besides Hashem, encompasses all the other mitzvahs. So the first commandment, I am God, your God, I took you out of Egypt. That mitzvah, that I am God, your God, I took you out of Mitzrayim, that commandment encompasses all the 248 mitzvahs, the 248 positive mitzvahs. And the prohibition not to have any other gods, that encompasses all the prohibitions, all the sins, all the prohibitions in the Torah that we should not have, that any sin you do is included in denying Hashem. And he's going to explain, join me in this Tanya, why he explains this idea. So let's see inside. It's known to all that the commandment and the warning against idolatry, the commandment to serve God, and the prohibition of God forbid, the second of the 10 commandments, not to serve idols. The two first commandments in Hebrew, it's Anochi, I am God, your God. You shouldn't have any other gods. They encompass in them, in those first two commandments, the entire Torah. Because the speech Anochi, I am God, your God, includes all the 248 positive commandments. And the not to have any other gods, that those encompass and include the 365 prohibitions. So in the first two commandments, we include the first one, to serve God, is a positive mitzvah, includes all the 248 positive mitzvahs. And the second one, not to have any other idols, includes all the prohibitions in the Torah. So you're violating all, by any mitzvah you do, you're actually violating the prohibition of serving idols. Therefore, something very interesting historically, the first two commandments we heard, only the first two we heard from Hashem. Like the rabbis of blessed memory say, because they encompass in it the whole Torah. So basically, very interesting. He says that when the Jews told Hashem, we can't handle it anymore, we can't handle the revelation, it's kind of like, that's okay. I'll give the rest of the information to Moses, but at least you heard the first two commandments from me. Why is that so important that at least you heard the first two commandments from Hashem? Because those first two commandments include all the other mitzvahs. So you, in a sense, you actually heard all the mitzvahs from Hashem, even though you only heard the first two, because since they're so general, so all-encompassing, that you're either, they encompass all the positive and all the prohibitions, so therefore, even though I only heard directly from Hashem, it's kind of like we heard all the mitzvahs from Hashem because they're included in those first two mitzvahs. Okay, let's keep on going down. So let's explain now that I was going to say, wow, that's an interesting idea that the first two commandments include all the other mitzvahs, but let's explain what we mean. And here's going to come a very powerful Chassidus, this is real Chassidus understanding of Hashem and how a Jew serves God. I want to share this brilliant idea with you just as an introduction. I find it very, very powerful to the message he wants to say. And this is a perspective on life, on how we view serving Hashem, keeping Torah mitzvahs. This is very important. Everything we do, we are either channeling God or we're denying God. If you're doing any of the 248 mitzvahs, you're serving Hashem through the 248 mitzvahs. So you're doing anything Hashem wants you to do, you're channeling God. If you're doing any of the 365 sins, you're creating a wall, a husk, a separation between you and Hashem. And that's really what life is all about. That's the sum total of a person's mission in life. Are you channeling God? Are you a vessel for Hashem? Or are you denying God? Are you cutting off Hashem and hiding God? And that's it. Now he's going to explain this in Chassidic philosophy, how this works. Very interesting. He's going to say that the world that we see that exists as an independent being is really not independent at all, and really just projecting God. It's just God. Godliness is it, or even more to say, it's nullified to God. Its existence is, like everyone says, fake news. The existence of the world and all of us human beings that walk around that think the world is so big and so strong, it's really fake news. It really doesn't exist. How come? How could we say this? How does Hasidic philosophy explain that the world really doesn't exist? Because he's going to say, relative, it's a theory of relativity, since Hashem is creator of the world, and not just created the world, he continues to create it. The energy source of the world is so nothing, is so small, literally non-existent relative to the energy above. If you would see that higher perspective, that higher energy, the world literally looks at it like nothing. Imagine like ants, like you're walking and you see an ant. The ant has his whole world of his friends, whatever, over there. And then you walk by it like a giant. The ant is like nothing compared to the person. But we're going to say that the world's even more null. Literally, the world is nothing that we see in existence that takes so much place we work so hard for it and consider it so valuable in our eyes. Relative to Hashem's perspective, it's really nothing. It's totally nullified to the energy of Hashem. So now, being with this perspective, and he's going to explain, laid down in very clear words of why this I guess, this theory of relativity, this not theory of relativity, but this idea of that relevant to the energy of Hashem, the world is nothing. He's going to lay it down in very clear terms. But just go back to our main point we want to bring out over here, is when you do a mitzvah, you nullify yourself to Hashem. You're doing Hashem's will and you're fulfilling the first commandment, I am God, your God. God forbid, when you do a sin, it's such a chutzpah because the world that's so nullified to Hashem, you're actually creating seemingly a division from the world that's cut off to Hashem, and therefore it's a very terrible sin. So let me take this in the Shema prayer, for example. When we say Shema, according to this idea, this philosophy, when you say Shema, you say Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You say that God is one. Very nice. So in a simple meaning, many people say that God is so amazing that he's the greatest of everything in creation. We're saying, according to this idea, we're not just saying that Hashem is the greatest of all, the most unique, amazing of all of anything that exists. We're saying much deeper than that the world is non-existent. It's totally nothing changed, as he's going to explain, between before creation and after creation. Hashem is one because the world doesn't exist relative to Hashem. And therefore, when you do a mitzvah, you're getting in touch and channeling that energy. And when you do a sin, you're literally denying Hashem. And that's why it's so severe. And that's why maybe a person, by meditating on this concept, they won't be able to sin. Not just they won't be able to do the sin of serving idols, which denies God. Anything that goes Hashem is denying the energy of the whole world, of everything that brought it into existence. How could you do a sin when you're denying Hashem? And that's how these chapters of Tanya will come in now, to explain how a simple Jew who's not holding on that level can actually meditate and consider the power of unity of Hashem and denying God within the regular everyday commandments of the positive and prohibitive mitzvahs. Let's see this inside, how the world is totally going to lay out clearly this idea of relative to the energy of Hashem. The world's actually non-existent and totally one with Hashem. In a very interesting way, he's going to explain. Let's do it now. To explain very well this idea, how the world and Hashem are one. We have to talk about the idea of God's unity. He's called the one and the unique. But like we say in Shema, Hashem is the oneness. What does it mean? So we're going to talk about, like a philosophical idea, that God is the ultimate oneness, the only one. What does it mean when we say God is one? Does it mean just that Hashem is the only God? There's only one God, not like other religions, believed at the time that their gods would fight and there's plurality in godliness, these ideas. Or do we mean something deeper? We mean that, let's see, everyone believes that he's the only one. And here's the statement, it's just like literally before God created the world and brought the world into existence. That just like God was one before the world was created, even when God went to create the world, God is still one and nothing else exists besides Hashem. So not just is Hashem higher and greater than the world, but relative to that energy of Hashem, there is no world. The world and Hashem are totally one in such a way that the world doesn't even exist, that energy of Hashem doesn't even, the world is not even considered to be in existence. Let's keep on going down. So continuing in the Tanya. And we mean this literally, he says. To Hashem, there is no change. So it's not like Hashem is a threat, or Hashem is somebody on his side, or no, there is no plurality. God is the only existence. Nothing else exists besides Hashem. It's taking it to the extreme. The meaning of interpretation here of that Hashem is the only one, literally, not just he's the greatest, but literally there's nothing else but Hashem. Why not? I think there's a world. Look around. How could you say God's the only one? There's a world. People have rights to do whatever they want. There's this big physical, ball, globes. There's universe, galaxies, because this world and all the higher worlds. Even though God created them from nothing and brought them into existence into something, still, even after Hashem creates them, they make no difference to the unity and one as the fact that God is a sole power and existence in the world. They don't make any difference to that. Just like Hashem was one before they were created, God continues to exist and be after they were created, to be completely and totally one, like before and after. This is a major thought in Chassidic philosophy, that when you say Shema, Hashem is one, not just that Hashem is the greatest, but there is nothing else besides Hashem in the world. Okay, let's keep on going. Scroll down. Why not? There's a world, because relative to Hashem, they don't exist. Their whole existence is not, besides Hashem, they're absolutely non-existent. But why? How does that work? How could something, Evan, go to the next day now? How could go to Friday's class, go scroll up to the top, or on the bottom you have it, you could press the arrow to go forward one day. How could it be? How could we say that something doesn't exist, right? It's probably in all of your minds. This question that I'm asking here is probably in all of your minds, right? Evan, press the arrow on the bottom next to today, that we should go forward one day. There we go. How could it be that something that exists, how could you say it doesn't exist? How could you say relative to Hashem? How could that be? It either does exist or it doesn't exist. What does it mean relative that something doesn't exist? Because the creation of all the worlds, the higher worlds, which means even the worlds of the angels, the highest, greatest holy worlds, the tachtonim and the lower worlds, from nothing to something. And we're going to, by the way, we're going to discuss this in length in the second book of Tanya, but right now we're just going to give you a small taste of it. And Hashem brought them into existence from nothing into something. And then Chayusam V'Kiyumam, God continuously gives them life and vitality that they could keep on existence. Because the way the world works, as we're going to explain in the second book of Tanya, not now in detail, we're going to discuss it, how it's not like you created once and it continues to exist. It has to continue being created every moment, every second. And if Hashem would stop creating it, it would just disappear. In the Hashem, it's only the words of God's mouth, like we learned in the Chumash Bereshis. Hashem said 10 sayings, and with those the world was created. So Hashem brought it into existence right in the beginning of creation, 5,700 whatever years ago, and then Hashem continues since then every single moment to bring it into existence through the 10 sayings that Hashem said. And now, so why is it nullified? But if it exists, Hashem used word and speech in order to create it. Al-Tareb is going to explain, well, why is it not? How could we say Hashem's only one? Good. So he brought it into existence, and God brought it into existence, and now it exists. He's even creating every single second. What do you mean relative to God? God's oneness is so strong that it doesn't exist. So he says, very interesting. So he says, I'll give you an analogy. I'll explain it in the soul of man. When a person speaks, it says one word, right? He says the word, whatever word he wants to say. He says the word, he says hi. This word that he said, the one singular word that he said, means that we know, the Rebbe spoke about this at length, that the body has three garments, right? The human being, he has a soul, which is the essence of the person. And then there's three ways that the soul expresses itself in the body. There's three methods of the body to express itself. It could either think, or it could speak, or it could do action, right? It could think about someone that they like them. It could say to the person, I like you, or it could give that person a hug. So there's three ways for the body to express itself. The middle one is speech. The higher one is thought, right? Thought creates speech. So you think about that you like someone and then you tell them you like them. And then action is the lowest one of the three garments that the body has, the most physical one of the three garments. The speech is kind of in between thought and action. Now he says, the one word that a person says, the value of that word relative to your ability to speak, that garment of speech, how much value does one word take up relative to your ability to speak? So that's what it means by relativity. How much value is it? How much? Keep on going, Evan, keep on scrolling. So he's got to say very little, almost nothing. Why? Because you could speak infinite amounts of words. Technically, if a person wouldn't die, if their power to speak, they could just talk and talk and talk and talk. I guess some people talk a lot. So they're going to speak how many words? Evan, if you could scroll down a little bit. How many words does, how many words can a person speak? In a million words. I don't know how many. Every day, the person could speaks thousands of words. But in theory, the ability to speak has unlimited, infinite amounts. So I'm going to ask you, how much is one word value relative to infinite? Nothing. There's no value on it because the value to speak is infinite. So when you do a comparison between the word to the power to speak that's spoken, it's really not relevant. It doesn't hold any ground because it can speak infinite amounts of words. It doesn't care about it. It's like imagine somebody with a kid who comes with a penny to a billionaire, which even has a number to it. It's not infinite. This person, the billionaire, still has a limited amount of money. It's a joke by him. But if a guy could have infinite money, someone has a printing press that could print money. They own the government. Maybe some people say that about the government. They have unlimited amounts of ability to print money. If someone has such a machine, money's irrelevant. Money's not valued. It doesn't matter. You can just print as much money as you want. It makes no difference. So it really holds no value. So speech relative, you could have something relative to the power of speech. The word is one word is meaningless. It has no value. Now let's go even deeper. Talk about relative. Let's go deeper than speech. Where does the power to speak come from? Fine. So one step is the relativity of one word to the power to speak. Well, what about who gives you the ability to speak? The brain tells someone if someone could mute themselves. I hear a little bit of background noise. If they could please mute themselves, so there's no background noise. Let's see who it is. I don't know. Oh, Ira, if you can mute your mic there, please, so there's no background noise. Thanks. So he says that relative to, so one word relative to speech, we're saying it's infinite, the ability to speak. So therefore, one word has no value. But now, where does the power to speak itself get its energy from? It gets its energy from the intellect. Aha. So if intellect is even more, is further away than the power to speak, which means that now the value of one word relative to intellect, that's for sure no value, right? Because when we think in letters, we think in words, we think in pictures and color, whatever. But when we think so when we speak, the power to speak speaks in letters and words and shapes and colors and pictures, and the brain also thinks in shapes and letters. So that letter that the brain had before it's thought about wanting to speak and then actually speaking, so it's even one step removed. It's even less physical than the power to speak, because it's thinking about speaking those letters. For sure, the word that came out is not relative to, doesn't hold any value regarding the ability of words in the brain. So that is two steps removed. And for sure, now go even deeper. Go even further than the brain. Where does the brain get its energy from? The brain gets its energy from the soul, the 10 energies of the soul. So the soul gave the brain the ability to speak, to think. The brain thinks now in letters, comes up with letters and shapes, and tells the mouth what to say. And then the power of speech says the word. So that word that comes out, relative to speech, and for sure relative to the brain which the speech came from, and for sure relative to the soul, this word has no value. And he says, you want to know the difference between the brain and the soul, is that the brain even uses letters and colors and shapes to think. But the soul is so far removed that when the soul feels something, it doesn't think in shapes and letters and so on. So the whole idea of words and shapes and letters don't exist in the source of the soul, where the soul exists. So of course there's no value to the word that comes out, because the soul doesn't even think as letters and shapes, because it's so much deeper than that. Evan, let's keep on scrolling. Or if we're done, let's go to the next day's Tanya. So beautiful. That Rebbe was explaining so far how you could have a relativity. So the capability to speak, the energy of speech, is infinite relative to one word. Okay, very nice. It's infinite relative to one word, but the ability to think is even more further removed, because those letters and shapes are much more spiritual. And then the soul, which doesn't even use shapes and letters to think, for sure, it's even further removed, and the word that came out has no value at all. And he gives a very nice analogy to explain this idea in the person. Very interesting the way he breaks up the way the brain and the heart works. Imagine someone has a certain lust in their heart. They like something. Believe in the heart of the man. They have a certain thing, they like it. Before they start thinking and understanding the lust that they have, before they understand it, they feel it, they sense it. I like this thing in my heart, emotionally. I didn't think about it yet. I don't even have the shapes and the letters to describe or understand even why it is that I'm feeling it. He just knows a very simple desire that I like this. I feel it. I want this. All I know is that I want this. I don't understand much about it. By the way, I was like talking to one of my kids late at night, and they told me, I don't know why I feel this way, but this is how I feel. So there are many areas in life which we could sense that we feel something, but we have no clue why it is that we feel that way. That could be coming from the heart before it went into the brain. So you have an area so deep that it doesn't have shapes and letters, and there's no way to describe it. There's no way to explain it. All right, Evan, let's keep on going. Keep on scrolling. So the and then there's even a step further before this desire. So you feel this desire. I don't know why I want it. I don't even really know what it is, but I feel it. But there's a step back. Before you even, there's a step before you feel the desire. You have kind of an appreciation for something that you want to have a desire for. So your brain, without letters and shapes, not understanding, your brain says, wow, this is something I want to get to know. Then it goes down to your heart, and your heart says, wow, I like this. I emotionally feel connected to this. No explanation, no understanding in the brain about why. Then it goes back up from the heart to the brain. For example, going back to the brain before it goes to the heart, the earliest stage. The brain says, look, this seems very nice. I would like to learn about it. Or I really like this idea. Or this food looks really good. I'd like to get into it. I see it seems like it's good to me. Then the heart, the brain sends it to the heart. You should desire this. And then it goes to the heart, and the heart starts craving it. Also doesn't know why. Then after that, it sends it back up to the brain. But this time, which part of the brain? The part of the brain that has intellect, that has capacity to think. To think about it, let me understand it, and starts breaking it down into words and letters and shapes and colors into the way that a human being could grasp. And it starts thinking, how can I get it? I want to get it. What am I gonna do? How much is it? Or let me learn about the desire. What can I learn about it? So all of a sudden your brain starts creating shapes and forms and letters to think about it using the talents and the skills of the shapes and the forms and the letters. And each nation has different ways of understanding, of perceiving ideas through those letters and shapes. Which everything in the world goes through those letters. So it seems like, it could be, certain countries like in Israel, they approach it in one way. In America or France, they approach it in another way. Canada, they approach it in another way. They think things differently. But then I guess the heart that senses that it wants it, it's the same all around the world, because it's not shapes and letters and forms. It doesn't matter about your education. That's kind of maybe like a sense of wanting, of yearning for something. And even higher than that is when the brain has an appreciation. Wow, I want to start appreciating this thing. I don't know why. I don't understand it at all, but it's something that I decided intuitively, eternally, that I want this. And that is the end of today's Tanya. So to sum it up and to wrap it up, this idea that we're learning today is that he's going to say, and then in chapter 21 of Tanya, and the next chapter of Tanya, right, Evan, we finished, or there's more here? I think we finished. Yeah, he's going to say in the chapter 21 of Tanya, now that we explained the idea of relativity, that the one word that's spoken, which means Hashem created, in our case, the whole world with just words, with just sayings. Hashem created everything in the world. And with the one word that's spoken, Hashem brought it all these things into existence. It is nothing compared to God. It's like non-existent. And therefore, the world is totally nullified to Hashem, which will discuss our topic at hand. How can you do a sin and go against Hashem when you're literally cutting off that item from Hashem, which is totally one with God? And that we'll learn about in the next few days of Tanya. Beautiful chapter of Tanya. Evan, you could end the recording here.